Hi, I'm Morgan with CEV. Thank you for joining us for the Special Populations panel. We're excited to have three panelists with us today. Shirley, if you would go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Okay, my name is Shirley Tautolo. I teach horticulture and food science at the Pink House Center, which is for Lansford School District north of Detroit.
Okay, great.
And I'm Max Williquit. I teach agriculture mechanics and technology at the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences on the south side of Chicago.
Okay, hi, I'm Velma Benavides. I teach law enforcement for Somerset ISD. It's a little town right outside of San Antonio, Texas.
Okay, great. We are so excited to have you guys here and talk about everything special populations. So the first thing, let's talk about what are some strategies you guys use for your struggling students?
One of the things I do is I try to break things into smaller pieces. If you give any student, let's say I wanted, them to write a report, I can't say, oh, you got to write this report. I do something to get their interest first, and what are you interested in, and then we do it step by step. So that's one of the biggest things I do.
Okay.
One of the things I like to do within iCEV is I'll set up a separate course code so that my students with the access, and I'll call it like makeup work session for my class. And so students that may not, when we reviewed material in class or went over a lesson in class, they can go back and review that. Because often during class, some of the assignments I give my students, one try at a quiz but I'll give them the opportunity to, and I'll speak to some of my students have a resource teacher where they have a study hall period first thing in the morning, and I'll ask their study hall teacher, can you make sure they're spending a little bit of their time this morning, redoing this quiz or reviewing this material in iCEV.
I'm with Shirley. I will chunk my assignments and do it, small sections at a time. Usually when I'm doing I kind of lecture as we're looking at the videos on iCEV, and everybody's got a Chromebook, so they'll follow along. And so, trust me, these kids will raise their hands if they don't understand something, and they'll say, "Wait a minute, stop! Repeat that again," or it'll pique their interest. But like I said, I try to break it up in small chunks.
Yeah.
One of the other things. Can I?
Yeah, go for it, please.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
One of the other things I do is I take your PowerPoints and I chunk them. And then I go and I use Screencast-O-Matic or Screencastify, and I cut down like your PowerPoints that are like 80 slides. I cut them down to 20 and make a 2-minute video. Right. And then I take that PowerPoint and I delete words out of each PowerPoint slide. And especially for the kids who are struggling, then they can go through that video that I made, and then they can go back and do that. I do that in class when they're in class. That was designed for that.
Right. Okay, and so what are some classroom management strategies that you guys use when students are working independently?
When I have students that are working independently, I like to do a checklist of like the whole project so they know where they are, what they need to do next, and what's going to be coming up.
When I have students working independently, I like to break them into groups. And obviously grouping students is something as teachers, we need to be careful with how we build different groups of students. But I like to have a couple different groups, maybe working on different lessons, or in a CTE classroom when I teach, I might be teaching electrical wiring. And, we may have all gone through an iCEV lesson all on electrical safety, but, I may have one or two groups working on a hands-on electrical wiring assignment, and then 1 or 2 groups working on one of the electrical wiring lessons in iCEV, which allows me to be a little more hands-on with some of the groups that need, direct instruction, and then other groups that can be a little more self-paced with an iCEV lesson, which is a great strategy I found to help balance what I'm doing with my lessons in the classroom.
Do you put your special population students in one group, or do you intermix your students with each other?
I usually intermix, and again, as a teacher, it's always important to be careful how you build groups, because I have some really high performing students, and some students that need the extra help. Some high performing students are great at helping other students. Some high performing students, would rather just not be bothered, let me do my own thing. So knowing, the students and how they interact together is important for doing that type of grouping.
Right.
Yeah, the same here. I group mine. Mine are always in groups of 4. I've done that for years. And like Max, I mix them, and they work a lot better that way. Independent study, even when they're working independently, I'll get on the printable side of the iCEV, and I'll print out and hand them all out, and then it becomes a competition, with which group is going to beat the other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, them working together it works really well.
I group also, but one of the things I do when I group is I try to offer the lesson almost like a choice board. I take the iCEV and I give them choices within it of what they can do, because you have all the different learning styles also. And so I think it's also important to give them a little opportunity how they're doing their group work.
Right.
See, and that's how I like to rotate my groups. Like when some students, they learn better directly hands-on, and I can be involved with them in that. Some, students, I'll do one of the iCEV lessons as they rotate through groups, with more printouts. That benefits some students to have a physical copy. Some of it is, the video and the accompanying worksheets digitally within iCEV, and that really helps some students to be able to continue to review the video as they do a vocabulary lesson on, or a student note lesson on the computer. So
I do the same. This was the first year that the school district that I'm at, has actually used the iCEV. So the kids it was foreign to them. And when they would ask, it's always like ask 3 before me. And when they knew that they had that opportunity to go back and review the video or the PowerPoint, they loved it. And that's how I said, you just go back and review. Gives them a sense of accomplishment when they can do something by themselves.
Absolutely. And so, so this past semester, the world's, kind of imploded a little bit. So, what were some strategies that you guys used for your special population students whenever you were doing distance learning?
I did kind of like what Max did, and I had different iCEV lesson categories for different students. I had students all over the place. But I had that special one for some of the slower learners or my English language learners. And then I also divided it up that way. So it worked.
A little bit of that, again, splitting students into, different lesson categories. But also, I mean, we have students who, with IEPs, they require some extra time. So maybe I would excuse them from, portions of a lesson. And that's one of the great things in iCEV, that you can really customize, and I can ask a student, hey, if you can focus on the vocabulary, where that's going to be the most important part of knowing, the terms that are important to this subject. And, maybe I won't ask them to do each one of the assessments, but have them really focus on the vocabulary and the terms. That's really going to help them understand that material.
Yeah, I agree. I did the same. A lot of our kids did not have access to internet, so it became very, very difficult. So we relied on Google Voice for them to text. And I did what Max did. It's like, you know what, concentrate on vocabulary. And I just try to simplify it as much as possible. It was just very difficult, very trying for a lot of the kids.
Yeah.
They went through a tough time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think just being understanding with, you know,
Yes.
what the kids were dealing with. I mean, it was difficult enough for us as teachers, but, you know, I've got, you know, students that are in, you know, mixed homes with multiple other age kids, and, you know, they're having to help babysit, then they're having to having to do their homework, and trying to be flexible. And that's one of the good things about iCEV, where students can go in at different times. You know, it didn't have to be a Zoom session where we're all together at once. You know, I can message students and, you know, say, hey, you know, do you have the time today to complete this assignment? You know, can you focus on this? So.
Well, what are some strategies that you guys use specifically for your special population students? These, they may help all of your general population students, but you use them specifically for one group of special populations kids.
The main thing, and I kind of mentioned it before, is having a separate course set up for, and you know, I don't want to make it seem like they're being excluded in a separate course. They can add an extra course in addition to, so while we're in class going over a lesson, you know, they can be working in the course same as everybody else. But then there's a separate course that, you know, I call makeup work. You know, I don't want to call it anything like, you know, special population students, right? It's a makeup work course where they're then allowed to go back. And I'm a little looser with the requirements that iCEV allows you to set, as far as, okay, you can only do this one time. You can only, you know, it doesn't give you the answers after. You know, I can allow them to view how they did on an assessment after, and retake it multiple times. And the nice thing that iCEV does is, if I have them enrolled in 2 of my courses, it will put the grades on the same grade spreadsheet, no matter which course they completed the assignment in, just with the settings within the grade book in iCEV.
Same here. It's very flexible, as far as with the kids. And so that nobody knows which are my sped kids, I tell everybody, okay, I'm going to give you 2 chances. And when I have a special pops child that still cannot get it, I say, you know what, don't worry about it. Do you think you can come by and see me whenever after school? Give me 2 minutes after school. And they'll come in, I will unlock it, and I'll give them another chance to be able to do it. And they appreciate that. But I have to keep it, because if I leave it open, they'll take the same exam 3, 4, 5 times. Everybody
sometimes it takes 5 times to get those 4 answer choices, right?
Oh yeah.
That's why I'll do it as a separate.
I do pretty much
course, because it allows only the students in that other course to do it the multiple 4 or 5 times, if that's the number of tries I've allowed. That way I don't have to keep reopening and unopening and doing things at different times.
And I do the other course also, but also one of the things I encourage, especially my special populations, is to use some of those graphic organizers, because it makes a big difference. And the other thing that, and this applies to special populations, but to everyone, my students are interested in competitions, so lots of games, and especially if food is involved. So when you start breaking down your groups, and at that, sometimes I break my groups into special pop versus not, depending upon, because I have a lot of different groups going on, so they don't even know what's going on. But I have these competitions, and boy, when there's food involved, or winning, or getting that little ticket, you know, out of a test question or something, they go for it. So those are just some of the incentive, I would say, that I use with it.
Well, and last, I know whenever I was in college for my education courses, we took special populations courses, but then you go into student teaching and you don't realize that you have all of the special populations in one class. And so, what advice, what tips would you give to new teachers that maybe you guys learned the hard way and you would like to kind of help them start off on a strong foot?
I'd say my number one thing is
My
being flexible. You know, being willing to learn from your students as much as they're learning from you. And, you know, just realize the first time I try to teach this lesson, I might have to change the way I'm doing it kind of in the middle of doing it, realizing, okay, you know, this information is clearly not hitting home with, you know, these different groups of students, you know, and whether there's, have some special needs, or, you know, some students that are advanced. You know, I've got students that, you know, are going to be, you know, directly ready for the workforce. I've got students that are going to go on to be engineers, and, you know, and in a mixed classroom like that, just finding ways to get information to hit home with all of the different levels of learning that need to occur in my classroom.
I would
I agree
say,
with Max. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I agree with Max also, but I also want to add that you need to get to know each and every one of those kids, because everybody has got something special about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that when you can connect with that one child, it just makes it a lot easier. I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I had a student who was autistic,
Mm-hmm.
and he was very much into the Avengers.
Mm-hmm.
So one day we're in class and he asks a question, and I can't remember what it was. And everybody turned around and looked at me like, how are you going to explain that one to him? And I looked back and I remembered on one of the Avenger movies, I took a sample from there,
Mm-hmm.
and he got it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the kids couldn't, the other students couldn't understand. It says you need to get to know, each kid individually. It takes a little time, but it's well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think personal relationships are very important. I also think reasonable expectations. It takes a long time to get things where you want. And you have to find what works for you, and especially with the special pops, because you are probably going to have a lot. But different things like the graphic organizers. I love sticky notes, those yellow sticky notes. We do all kinds of stuff with them. And I also love all the different colored highlighters.
Mm-hmm.
And those students do different things with colors and the sticky notes, and they just, fitting all those things, whatever works for you, into it. And what may work for one person, one teacher, may not work for you, and that's okay.
Exactly.
But don't expect a lot of change, and initially it takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys so much.